Hi, I'm Janyan, and in this video I'm going to show you how I made this serving tray completely differently to how I designed it.
I was really happy with the design I've made for a flat Sapele tray with breadboard ends and sycamore accents. I was particularly excited about these handles, but you'll have to see later why I abandoned these. I got myself some rough sawn Sapele and got to milling it up.
Here's an interesting thing about rough sawn timber, is that it's the sizing that is rough as well as the surface finish. So I ordered 38mm rough sawn timber, and this one, once I've planed out all the saw marks, has gone down to 34.5, but this one is now at 39.5, so it's actually bigger than what I ordered, even in rough form. And my plan now is to resaw this in half into two 18mm boards, and then that's actually most of the material I need for this project. So I'm going to do that at the bandsaw, and then I've got about 1mm leeway that I can clean up at the thicknesser. So let's go do that now.
I have never paid so much attention to a single cut as I did here, because there was very little margin for error.
Looks good.
Then I planed the other side and got to work marking up and cutting the boards for the main panel. I decided to use biscuits for alignment to make the glue up easier. Once that had set overnight, I took it out of the clamps and realised my first mistake. You can see here that one side is wonky, but the other side is flat.
I have made a bit of a mistake. After I resawed the stock and let it acclimatise, I then came back and only planed the rough sawn side, and the other side had actually warped just a little bit. But that means that when I came to glue it up, it was a complete mess. So what I'm going to do to fix it is cut it in half. I'm going to plane both sides and then glue it back together, and that should fix it and give me a flat panel.
This was very much a painful operation to do. I lost a bit of thickness, but not too much that it would make much difference. This time I glued up the panel without any biscuits. While I was waiting for that to cure, I milled and glued up a sycamore panel for the inlay. This design was made with all rounded corners to make it easy to cut on my CNC router. When the CNC was finished, I freed the parts using the bandsaw. Then came the truly scary part, engraving the Sapele panel. I'm inherently distrustful of CNC routers doing what I want them to do, but this went flawlessly. Then I glued in the sycamore, making sure to keep the grain aligned on all of the pieces. When it was dry, I planed away most of the excess, and then flushed it up with the sander. With the panel done, I cut the boards for the breadboard ends, and this gave me my second big problem. The purpose of the breadboards is to keep the panel flat, but this board developed a serious twist as I cut it. So I decided to pivot here and started cutting down my spare board to make up a frame for the panel. My new plan was to make a frame which flared out in all directions, so I cut a tongue into my panel with angled cuts at 15 degrees. With the angles established on the table saw, I removed the rest of the waste with the router. I then cut a matching groove on all of the sides and cut the same angle into the bottom so that the tray would sit nice and flat. Now my mitre sled is only made to cut square edges, so I cut some scraps to the same angle and used those to hold my workpieces securely. Even then, I was very careful making these cuts. And I slowly snuck up on the right fit. Before setting a stop block. The next challenge was to design a new handle, so I squared up some more of the sycamore, then cut tapered blocks to the same 15-degree angle. And I chamfered those edges at 15 degrees to make them more comfortable. Then I glued them onto the ends and added a small corner support for strength. With that done, it was ready for final assembly, so I pre-finished every piece with a hard wax oil, making sure to mask off any of the glue surfaces. I used the same angled scraps from the mitre sled to make some clamping blocks, as there was no other way to apply pressure. Initially I glued them on, but clamping them works just as well. I also added some splines, but I don't think that they're big enough to add much strength. Despite looking very different to my initial design, I am over the moon with how this turned out. It's a real step up for me, and I think it's going to be really useful. If you want to see more projects as I build up my skill set, please subscribe to my channel.